This is where I was on the 26th of November. I'd come to London as a journalist to report on an anti-Semitism rally. I was in this cafe, having a breakfast. When I left, I was confronted by the police, I was arrested, I was violently attacked, and I was pepper sprayed. I had committed no crime. As we begin, I want you to ask yourself some questions. Do we have freedom of the press? Do we have freedom of assembly? And do we have freedom of speech? Or do we live in a totalitarian state? This was going to be a film about two-tier policing. Two-tier policing where the police treat some people brutally and others, Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, those destroying British monuments and history, Hamas supporters, well, for those, they failed to apply the law at all. But as I thought about what was going on, I kept coming back to the question, why? Why are the police behaving like this? And a second question, what else is going on in our nation that might explain it? The closer I looked, it became very clear that there were many other things going on, which taken together look almightily similar to the strategies used by totalitarian states like Russia, China, North Korea and Saudi Arabia. If we're not quite there already, I believe we're drifting perilously close to becoming a totalitarian state. Now what does that mean? A totalitarian state is one where the state decides which ideas are correct. It uses its power to impose an official ideology. Dissent is treated as resistance. Institutions like the civil service, judiciary, police and free press are facades for the exercise of state power. Media, academia, organised religion, the justice system, banking and finance are used to retain power. Power is concentrated with an elite. Social traditions and culture are swept away by the new ideology. The social fabric of society is weakened as a result. Participation in an approved ideology is encouraged and then required. Individualism, true diversity of thought and freedom are replaced by mass conformity to beliefs and behaviours sanctioned by the state. A totalitarian state relies on force to suppress all opposition. And in the end, as seen in countries mentioned, Russia, China, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, eventually large-scale violence and assassination become permissible to achieve their goals. Now, if you think that's nonsense, and if you think it only applies to me, you need to keep watching.
They are protesters from the controversial Just Stop Oil group.
Get out, mate, come on.
How long are you going to stay here for?
Thank you.
Whoa, children! This is what you get when you're a football club.
And yet when they march down with hundreds of Palestinian flags, you won't say a word.
If you stay, you're going to get arrested. Following us! You're following us! You are quite openly
Why, when it's us, they ask the police?
To establish what you're doing or what you're up to.
Two-tier policing! Yeah! Two-tier policing!
That's right, you can climb on monuments, you can vandalise them, you can block the streets while praying to Allah. You can glue yourself to the road and the police will protect you and bring you water. You can surround the police and they'll release their prisoner. But...
Racist! Not in Palestine! You're not in Palestine. You're in England. They're racist. Yes, they are. Yeah.
I have a right to protest.
And I have a right to stand on my doorstep. It's my property.
You can't shout
I'm
things
renting.
out
Yes, I
there.
can.
No, you can't.
The idea that calling a bunch of racists racist is in fact a criminal offence, because the fact of the matter is, when you're shouting from the river to the sea, you are being racist. And when a gentleman stands on his own front doorstep and shouts out, "You are being racist," then what the police have to do is respect that.
Women and children were raped. They were raped. See? That's what you're doing. Yeah? That's what you're doing. Yes.
You're not going to win this, mate. You need to stop.
And you're not going to win this. This is my property. I live here.
Right,
They're outside my house. Doesn't matter.
You're in a public space.
This is my house. I live here. I pay rent.
This is your home.
They asked the gentleman to respect the demonstration. Well, the police are supposed to respect the counter-demonstration, particularly when the counter-demonstration consists of one person standing in their own doorway, posing a threat to nobody. But that's where we're at. The police are making political choices, political decisions. They're allowing one group to chant and scream whatever slogans they like, and then they arrest or threaten with arrest counter-protest. That can't be right, and it gives us another clue, yet again, of which side the police favour.
Sorry? Why you don't allow anti-Semitic comments to go on? I'm not getting involved. You're a police officer. You're a police officer.
Yeah, I can see that.
So why not holding the British laws?
They're allowed to have a protest.
So they're allowed to say from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free.
They're allowed to have a protest, yeah.
Are they allowed to say that?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Yeah, you've not been told that there's certain slogans that are anti-Semitic.
All right, I'm done with this conversation.
You don't have the right to speak in the UK. We've seen online censorship. This is now offline censorship, where an individual police officer decides what is acceptable and what is not.
We'll find some Jews there. We want the Zionists, we want the blood.
What we're saying now, and I'm making it very clear so everyone understands, if those dogs come close to us again, we will see it as an act of aggression and we will kill those dogs, we'll put them down.
We saw Hamas supporters shouting death to Jews, saying that Hitler was right, calling for a genocide in Israel. They were left alone. The mainstream media deemed it a peaceful protest. The police didn't touch them.
Thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches.
You cannot wave the Union Jack.
Arresting an Englishman for flying a Union Jack when there's people here literally tacitly supporting the October 7th.
You cannot preach the Christian gospel.
If you make members of the public harassment, alarm, distress, it's a criminal offence.
I'm aware of that. Yeah, so that's what we're not really doing that. What we're doing is about preaching our religion. You asked me what I've been preaching, so we've been preaching about the gospel of Jesus Christ.
And closer to home for me, you cannot work as a journalist if the government doesn't like your views or your reporting.
I'm here at work.
That this has got nothing to do with your role as a journalist.
But I'm here at work.
Your presence here is causing alarm and distress.
And you don't
If you do not leave, sort out a refund, I will come in and I'll make sure you...
What I saw from that demonstration, Tommy being arrested for wanting to report, is a huge intrusion of police powers into journalistic freedom. He was pepper sprayed, arrested with 30 police officers, a overreach of their power on a single individual journalist that simply wanted to tell a story.
You only have to look at the way Tommy was treated by the police and see how different it is from the treatment that gets given to jihadis or Islamists or extremists or people who actually want to hurt our country. You want to hurt our country, hurt England, my home, you get treated with kid gloves. You want to stand up for our country, stand up for our culture, and you get battered to within an inch of your life. You get pepper sprayed in the face, and you get treated like you're scum.
I think what happened with Tommy was very scary for your average Brit to see someone turn up quietly having their breakfast and the overwhelming police response to that, then to be cuffed and to be maced in the face, I think is a sign of a fearful police force. You know, if they're going to do it to him and these figures that stand in front of people and stand for people, then they will do it to you.
I think that there's a particular paradigm in place that renders some people on the inside and some people on the outside, and our lad Tommy is of course on the outside, and so he will get treated in ways that other people who may be equally or more divisive won't be treated, ever. I went down to the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday to pray for our fallen, to pray for the servicemen who have died for our freedoms, to protect these so-called liberties, and I was cast as far right, along with people like Tommy Robinson, who were also down there. So what does that tell us? Well, the police came and they kettled us, they cordoned us off, and the mainstream media painted us as far right. So the media, the police, and the government are against certain demographics, and the other demographics get away with whatever the heck they're like.
England didn't want the Jews. England didn't want Jewish people in their country.
What are you guys up to? We're just putting up flags.
Putting up flags.
We encounter police more or less every single time. As we tell them, we're putting up the flags in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Let's think about flags and emblems for a minute. It seems absolutely fine if you want to walk down the street carrying a banner that says Free Palestine. But if you're raising and following and flying and celebrating a St. George's Cross, for instance, then even though it may be entirely legal, the police see you as being on the wrong side of history. They see you as being on the racist side of history. Again, that's so disrespectful of us as a nation.
For the moment, anything racist or even close to racism is said. Alright. Hang on, let me finish. For the moment, anything gets anything close to that, alright, people are going to start getting arrested.
You can hold it, you can wave it. It's just we don't just not causing any sort of issues with the barriers. Have your flags, just not on the barriers. That's it.
And yet, when they march down with hundreds of Palestinian flags, you won't say a word.
Hanging out of the car. You never see fuck all. There's way more of them than there is of us.
That's right. They tell you the ISIS flag isn't the ISIS flag.
The solution is jihad by the armies of the Muslim countries.
Calling for jihad on the streets of Britain isn't calling for holy war, and beaming anti-Semitic genocidal slogans onto Parliament, that's fine as well.
I spoke to the police a minute ago over there, and they said it is an offence to do that. I don't know the particular law. It's an offence. Stop it. But they're not.
And this is something I've been warning about for 20 years.
There's a two-tier system across this country, one rule for them, another rule for us. It needs to change.
Well, there's a two-tier system. The rule of law has got to be implemented equally across all communities.
When I'm talking about the two-tier policing system, it seems to be for the Muslim community.
Many people have lost their jobs or their promotions for speaking their mind. And Lee Anderson lost his job for telling us what we all know, that the capital streets have been handed over to Islamic mob rule.
I don't actually believe that these Islamists have got control of our country, but what I do believe is they've got control of Khan and they've got control of London. And again, this stems with Khan. He's actually given our capital city away to his mates. Beware, because if you let Labour in through the back door, expect more of this and expect our cities to be taken over by these lunatics.
We have allowed our streets to be dominated by Islamist extremists and British Jews and others to be too intimidated to walk through central London week after week. And now we're allowing Islamist extremists to intimidate British members of Parliament. This is wrong. It has to stop. Would my right honourable friend organise a debate on extremism and how we tackle this challenge, which is one of the central issues facing our generation?
Again, this is nothing new. In 2011, an imam from the East London Mosque told the Metropolitan Police I was not allowed to march through Tower Hamlets on a charity walk for a dying child. The night before the walk, Scotland Yard warned me as I was not to enter Tower Hamlets. I went, I was assaulted on the border of Tower Hamlets in front of the police.
The violent mob. Shouldn't you be dealing with the violent mob? Not people expressing right. How far? Just want to just fucking get out of it. What are you doing? There you go. Get back.
Arrest him for assault. 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 That's all on camera, so arrest him for assault. How come he hasn't been handcuffed? How come he hasn't been handcuffed? How come he hasn't been handcuffed? Why have you got your hands on us?
Because I am going to be arresting you.
You're going to arrest me? You're going to arrest us for doing a charity
walk? I need to explain why.
So now we're getting arrested.
Actually, look what happened. The two police stepped back, two unidentified men, probably undercover police, step in and assault me. I didn't react, but I was arrested. I was sent to trial. I was given bail conditions that banned me from entering the borough of Tower Hamlets for 9 months. No evidence. It was kicked out. It's lawfare. You see, in a totalitarian state, the police operate outside the constraints of the law. Their actions are purposely unpredictable to destabilise those of us, any of you, with the wrong kind of views. And they lie. They continuously lie.
You're stitching him up! You're stitching him up! Take him away!
The police said I was carrying an offensive weapon. They fabricate a reason to arrest me. They detain me, they take me to the police station. As soon as I'm there, they drop the case of an offensive weapon. Then they look for something else to arrest me on. Breaching coronavirus regulations. No joke. Again, no evidence. Kicked out. Lawfare.
I think democracy can't function with two-tiered policing. I think a two-tiered justice system and a two-tiered policing system is a existential threat to democracy.
Once that trust's broken down, it's extremely corrosive for community relations and leads to a lot of resentment, and it diminishes the law in itself.
We need to look at a police officer and not have a clue where the political allegiance lies. Now, we can't do that when they adopt the symbols of certain political groups. When they put a rainbow epaulet on their shoulder, or when they turn a police car into a rainbow car, we know which side of the political divide they are on. When they take a soft approach to pro-Palestinian marching and a hard approach on those who protest it, we know which side of the political divide the police are on. And we need to have no idea which side the police are on. In any matter, it's the police's job to uphold the law. That is it.
Another key feature of a totalitarian state is a politicised judiciary. In fact, in a totalitarian state, all the elements of the state are there to create an appearance of a fair process, when in fact, they are a facade of fairness and due process. They are there for the state, not the people, and they are used to advance the causes of the state, however malign or misguided the cause might be. You see, Sam Mellier was imprisoned for 2 years for putting up stickers that said immigration had destroyed Great Britain. Bunny Crean was imprisoned for 2 years for putting a bacon sandwich outside a mosque. He died in jail during that sentence. While at the same time, 3 women who were found guilty of terror offences weren't even fined. They were given a conditional discharge, totally let off. A Muslim abuser, Adil Rashid, he was convicted of raping a 13-year-old child. He was let off because he wasn't aware that wasn't allowed, because he'd been brought up under the influence of Sharia. Ignorance apparently is an excuse. A recent Newcastle grooming gang, one of them was let off with a community order for raping children. He raped children. He too was let off. Just like the two-tier policing, we have a politicised two-tier judiciary, where the law is not actually the law. The law is whatever the judge decides it is based on who's sitting in front of them. And perhaps most galling for me personally,
How are you feeling about the verdict?
Oh, I'd suck your mum's fat head.
You've got no guilt. Is there any guilt? Is there any guilt, mate? Is there any guilt?
back in 2018, I was imprisoned for reporting outside Leeds Crown Court at the end of a trial of now convicted child rapists. But watch this.
We grant the extension of time in respect of the finding of contempt in Leeds Crown Court and allow the appeal against that finding for the detailed reasons set out in the judgment, essentially because the process was flawed.
That's right. It was found to be an unlawful imprisonment.
Oh, this is Lennon from ITV, Matthew Hudson. Funny I'm talking to us at some point.
Do you know, can I tell you something? Yeah. I face a contempt charge, yeah? For doing exactly what you just done to me now. Exactly identical what you just done to me.
Clearly I couldn't comment on that.
No, exactly. I'm being prosecuted by exactly what you've just done. I'm facing charges.
I still spent 3 months on solitary confinement before being released. So the public had seen them falsely imprison me. So they had to get me. They took me back to the Old Bailey twice and eventually convicted me again on contempt of court, which I did not commit, by the way. And they gave me another 10 months in prison. So 13 months and then 10 months for asking now convicted paedophiles, how do you feel about your sentence?
What's the difference between what I did and what you did?
You've now been found in contempt of court. You lost your chance to be an MEP. Do you think the myth of Tommy Robinson has just been burst now?
You don't care, do you? You don't care that people's freedoms have been taken away. You don't care that a judicial system has just prosecuted someone because of who they are, not what they've done. You don't care, do you? You're a journalist. Do you not care about people's freedoms to report?
What do you get for contempt of court? The Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror actually collapsed the trial of Levi Belfield for the rape and murder of the child Millie Dowler. Contempt of court. Same, they were fined. Rod Liddell, whilst writing for The Spectator, he actually collapsed the Stephen Lawrence murder trial.
The Spectator magazine is being prosecuted for breaching reporting restrictions during the trial of Stephen Lawrence's killers. Gary Dobson and David Norris were described as disgusting racists in an article written by Rod Liddell while the Old Bailey trial was underway. The magazine is accused of breaching a court order preventing prejudicial material being published before jurors reached verdicts.
What was his punishment? A fine. You see, we have a politicised judiciary.
We have spent £115,000 so far fighting this case. We have received no legal aid. The Muslim paedophiles from the Rochdale grooming case were given £1 million of our money to fight that case. The court ordered that those paedophiles would be deported when they're released from prison. Those paedophiles are still walking around the streets of our country.
And bring it back to my arrest in November last year. It's important to understand the process is the punishment. I had to go to court 7 times, and every time I had to go, it cost me thousands of pounds. My freedom was taken. My ability to work was taken from me. The cost was £60,000. And what was the outcome? The arrest was unlawful. The bail conditions were unlawful. The entire thing was unlawful. Police officers lied in their statements, fabricated paperwork. They lost all their body-worn video footage. That's right, every police officer you see with a body camera on, they all lost it. The dog ate my homework, Your Honour. So have we won? Or have they won? They physically attacked me, they pepper sprayed me, they banned me from my capital city for 6 months, they financially bleed me.
The point I want people to understand is I've just said I've won, yeah? Have we won? Do we have freedom? For the last 6 months, I've been banned from entering my capital city, whilst jihadists have took over our capital city week in, week out, with the grace of the police allowing them to. I've had my restrictions, my right to a family life. I even went to court to ask if I could take my children to the Christmas lights turn on, and I was refused that opportunity. For the last 6 months, I've had to go to a Muslim police officer and ask permission to come into my own capital city, of which one of the meetings was to interview a member of parliament. That Muslim police officer refused that request. That is a police state. That is not freedom. What's been ruled on is that the arrest was unlawful, pepper spraying was unlawful. They arrested me on my daughter's birthday. Yeah? On my daughter's birthday, that's now unlawful. Their bail conditions are unlawful.
This is about lawfare. The process is the punishment.
Our eyes have been opened because of the internet age. We can see precisely what's going on before they spin it. And then we can compare the narratives of the true events that we saw with our own eyes versus what they want us to believe.
And there's always more rules. Rules that superficially sound reasonable enough. Non-crime hate speech. No one wants hate, right? But those rules are simply weaponised to silence people again. And the people with the wrong kind of views.
In Russia last year, 400 people were arrested for things that they said on social media. 400 people in Russia. Obviously, this country is very different. How many people do you think were arrested in Britain for things they said on social media last year?
Go on.
Take a guess.
I have no idea.
3,300.
Really? Arrested for what they'd said on social media?
Yeah.
Much of this current obsession by the police with what we say and think, even in the privacy of our own homes, even on social media, even as banter amongst friends, is based on this thing called the Allport scale. Now, the Allport scale was written by a psychologist in the 1950s to show where genocide comes from. And he has a 5-step program, if you like, which begins with contrary speech. So if you, as I did, retweeted somebody else's limerick, and the political content of that limerick was anti-trans, as it was when I retweeted somebody's limerick in 2019. The logic of the police is this, that is the first step on a 5-step program that ends in genocide. They say that without necessary intervention at step 1, you'll move to step 2, which is indirect discrimination against people of a group. And then if it's not stopped there, it'll move to step 3, which is direct discrimination. And then step 4, which is violence. And finally, step 5, which is terrorism, genocide, and murder. That's the police logic. And that's why they are so obsessed by what you think and say, even in the privacy of your own home.
Of course, they can justify their actions, silencing people, by telling us they are protecting due process or protecting us from misinformation. But as Robert Kennedy says, there is no time in history when the people censoring speech were the good guys. And he points out, a government that has the capacity to silence its opponents has the power to commit any kind of atrocity. And when they want to, they just create more legislation, like the Online Safety Act brought into effect in October last year. It's always for our own good. The benevolent government protecting society from the extremists. That's how they sell it to you.
So what is the future of journalism in the UK? It's increased censorship. The Online Safety Bill censors online content. And with the police now being given free range to restrict any journalist at any moment, at any demonstration, I think this will curtail and stop the freedom of the press.
But there are some problems here. The new online safety legislation, it can be weaponised by anyone. Literally anyone can claim they're alarmed or distressed and use the law to silence ideas they can't cope with. The drag queens, men who get sexually aroused by dressing up as a woman and reading to your primary school children. The Muslims who don't want Islam to be scrutinised by people who think Islam might not be such a great idea for Great Britain. Any woman who doesn't think a man can become a woman by just wishing it. And if you want to see how much distress you can cause Generation Z, by simply saying there's 2 genders. It's clear every new piece of legislation presented for your good, the good of the people, results in more power for the government and is then weaponised by the government and those who hate our nation and our values. It leaves each of us with less and less freedom.
It should go without saying that this isn't an optimistic future, and if we continue going as we're going, independent voices will be snuffed out entirely.
Another feature straight out of the communist totalitarian playbook is the use of security services. to spy on its own citizens. Russia's KGB, East Germany's Stasi, Romania's Secure State, they were all at it, spying on their own citizens on an industrial scale. And rather close to home, before Elon Musk rescued Twitter, the Twitter files revealed how the oxymoronically named Democratic Party had staffed it with FBI agents with the power to read the private messages of whoever they wanted.
Now, a journalist working with Twitter claims the FBI paid the social network money and at the same time pressured Twitter about its content.
Yeah, Meanwhile, Elon Musk's newest Twitter file showing how cozy the relationship was between the FBI and Twitter right before he took over. Journalist Matt Taibbi's thread showing that there were more than 150 emails.
The FBI asks to remove 3 accounts. That gets forwarded to Twitter. Twitter immediately suspends the accounts. But more importantly, when there's a glitch and the accounts remain up, the FBI immediately writes back and says, "What's the deal? We just wrote to you. Why is it still up?"
And do not think the security services intrusion isn't happening here in Great Britain.
What are you doing? Show me who's in the back of your car.
There's no one in the back of the car.
So what are you doing then?
We're not here, anything to do with you.
What are you doing then?
Well, what do you think we're doing?
I think you're something doing me.
No.
Who's yours work for? So what are you doing? And there is someone in the back. I know there's someone in the back. So what are you doing here? I don't know who you are. That's what I wanted to tell me. Go on, tell me what you're doing. You tell me what you're doing then. Because essentially I've got threats against me. I know you. Yeah? So what are you doing here? If I turn it off, you can tell me what you're doing.
We go in.
Who's in the back of your car?
No one's in the back.
Who's in the back of your car? You're not going nowhere. You're not going nowhere. I'm not moving, bro. Let me see who's in the back of your car. Tell me what you're doing in my house. I want to know what you're doing, bro. That's all I want to know is what you're doing. I've got police officers sat with recording in a recording van. In the back of this van is a recording station. I'm not standing. You're not going, bro. No, because what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. They're sat in the back of their van. This is recording devices. The whole of this back thing, because he just opened it up when I got him out, the whole of this back thing is recording where they're pointing there because what this is has been a setup. These police officers setting me up.
That was 2 men, one wearing a wig, from the security services outside my house in a van with false plates on and full of listening equipment. Not investigating a crime, but listening to see if they could find one. When did any of us vote for this level of state intrusion? Of course, to maintain control, every totalitarian state must control what you hear, what the people hear. And the government learned that the media, big tech, and the British people were easy to control. Pay the media and big tech, terrify the people, label misinformation, anything and everything you don't agree with, demonise and arrest anyone who doesn't comply. Just look how that worked with COVID.
The anti-vaxxers, dangerous obsessives.
I don't want them sitting next to me in the theatre. I don't want them standing next to me at the theatre bar. I don't want them next to me or anywhere near me or even in the same carriage on the train.
Frankly, if you're not vaccinated at the moment and you're eligible and you've got no health reason for not being vaccinated, you're not just irresponsible. I mean, you're an idiot.
Welcome to BBC Verified. Like you said, we are a team of investigative journalists here at the BBC. We are also a new brand and we are a physical location above the newsroom in London. And the point of the team, as you said, is to verify video, to fact check, to counter disinformation and to analyse really complex stories so we can get to the truth of what's going on.
And look what happens to independent journalists. The Voice of Wales reporting at a vaccine centre.
We saw how the media were manipulating everything, and then we saw a gap in the market for truth. Honest media, yeah, for truth, which is quite mad. So that's why we thought, well, let's just form our own media. You know, let's be the media. People in Wales aren't getting the truth. We can give it to them.
With yourselves, have you faced opposition to your journalism?
Oh, yeah.
From the police? What? Can you give me the worst example of this?
Worst example would have to be Cwmbran, wouldn't it?
It absolutely is Cwmbran.
We went to report on, there was, when all the vaccine centres were, people going to attempt to serve papers, we heard that this was going on. We went down to this one in Cwmbran. There was only 3 people there. We were separate from them. Yeah, and it was all calm. It was all nice. They went in, they were polite. They weren't aggressive at all.
Nope.
And it went on for about an hour.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, a chief inspector turned up, Martin Smith, is it? And he turned up and inflamed it all, as he does. He knew we were there. We've got friends inside the cops who give us information, and ex-police officers. They said there's no way a chief inspector would have come down for 3 protesters. He's there for you, and that's what it was. He was absolutely there for us. He instructed people to leave. He said to leave the doorway, and he said, could you please, if you want to protest, can you please stand over there in the designated protest area, which is still on the land. We moved because we're just there filming, not involved, not engaged. We moved. One guy kind of refused to move, and the order was given to arrest everybody. And then that included us.
Yeah, and that was after we'd shown them our press passes.
Right, at this moment in time, it's 1:32 and you are under arrest for aggravated trespassing. You don't have to say anything, but I may have on your defence. If you do not mention when questioned something which you'll later lie in court,
we're here filming.
Anything you do say may be given in evidence, okay?
Okay, we're literally only here filming though. We're media. We are literally media. We're not part of this group. We was informed that this was happening, so we came down.
Right, okay.
So the first charge that we had was aggravated trespass.
Yep.
That's what they said.
And then in the middle of the night it was changed to fraud.
Fraud, 2 counts of fraud.
And that then gave them permission to break into our homes.
They took your car, they took tripods, they took microphones. I don't know what a microphone...
Everything you do, you work with?
Everything we do, I work with.
Correct.
They let us go. Stan was my lift. We travelled up together. And I said, oh yeah, I'm just waiting for Stan. They said, no, you're not waiting for Stan. Your conditions are you're not allowed to be anywhere near Stan.
So people understand you're a double act.
Yeah.
Your journalism is a double act.
Yeah.
Your shows are a double act. You go everywhere together.
Yeah.
So you are the show.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. And they've given you bail conditions. You're not allowed near each other.
But then they said, right, okay, well, if you want to go for coffee and something with Stan, you can, but you can't do Voice of Wales.
Which shows exactly what it was about. It was about your journalism. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with colluding.
No. So we got to court. They wheeled in all the police officers, 3 sergeants and a chief inspector, and they basically all perjured themselves. They said that we were aggressive, we refused to leave the land. We were told numerous times to leave the land, which is what the trespass charge would have came from. When in fact, our argument was, well, no, we've got the footage, and the footage says if you would like to protest, please stand over there in a designated area. So we were invited to stay on the land.
If you wish to protest, you can go and stand over there with my colleagues, okay?
But the police officers all gave statements and evidence that lied. They totally lied.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that SIM card, as journalists, you've gone to report something, you'd be in jail.
All you need to do is look at the treatment that people like yourself get, people like we get, for simply talking about true things that are happening. We don't make the news, we don't create these events and pretend that something's happening when it's not. We go and report what is actually happening.
That looks just like Russia, China, North Korea, and Donald Tusk's anti-conservative antics in Poland.
In December, we had an event with Andrew Bridgen MP and Carl Benjamin, and what better person to report on it but Tommy? You rely on other journalists, other media outlets promoting what you're doing, discussing it. It was an event holding the line, challenge the narrative, looking at free speech. So I get a call from DC Shah, police officer, and he wants to know information about the event. He then goes away. I then get a message from Tommy to say he's been blocked or banned or not allowed. And I understand later that he needs to ask permission from a single police officer whether he's allowed to enter London and report on events. So it seems as though this individual police officer has absolute power to restrict Tommy as a journalist reporting on any event in London, and that power in the hands of a single individual should concern all of us.
This should be a warning to all reporters, not just in Great Britain, but across the Western world, because we do not have a freedom of press, never mind freedom of association. Look at what's happening in the United Kingdom. We've got this body, this regulatory body called Ofcom, who regulate broadcast media. They're being given new controls, new powers to regulate the internet as well. And it looks like they're an independent organisation, but of course they're not. They're an arm's length organisation of the government. They are controlled by the government, they are assigned by the government, therefore it is essentially the government who is regulating the media.
Reporting across the Western world is fracturing very, very quickly, very, very suddenly. We've noticed that trust in the media is at an all-time low. The stats support that.
All the legacy media of losing their income because they've not got the viewers, they haven't got the readers, because they're seen by the public now of not reporting the news properly, but that just makes them more dependent on the support they're getting from big business and government.
I've actually seen quite clearly the different type of treatment when it comes to someone like me when I'm reporting, and when they see someone like Chris Mason from BBC News. Even the facial expressions, even the way the body language changes is telling.
The press, as we know, is very, very controlled. The mainstream media is hugely controlled. Journalists I've known for many years, and I won't name them, but I mean, in Parliament, they won't talk to me anymore. And when they do, they will admit privately that if they printed my views on issues, they'd lose their jobs immediately, and it certainly wouldn't get covered. So we're not getting a balanced view of world events. We're getting a very biased view. That smacks of actually a totalitarian control where the state decides who is the news broadcasters and what the news is.
Well, with controlled media, you can inject propaganda into the population on a daily basis and indoctrinate them all. You can hammer away pumping out the same messages. COVID's going to kill you. The vaccine's 100% safe and effective. Global warming is going to kill us all. Mass immigration and diversity are our greatest strengths. And if you can control what people hear, very soon you can control what many people think. Many people, not all.
We are the Behavioural Insights team, the world's first nudge unit. We generate and apply behavioural insights to help people lead better lives and support communities.
The government set up a unit to manipulate you in 2010, the Behavioural Insights team known as the Nudge Unit. Its sole purpose is to work out how to get you to do what they want. With COVID, they decided fear was the best tactic.
Let's bring you more on the latest infection numbers and the number of people who've died.
Yes, and the most shocking thing actually is the number of people who have died.
The United Kingdom's death toll from the coronavirus has risen by 1/5, that's 20%.
The latest number of deaths in the UK is higher than any daily total reported by either Italy or Spain.
13,258 people are in hospital with coronavirus, and 28,734 people have died.
They weaponised fear against you to terrify you, so they could get you to stay in your house, wear a mask, be in the bubble, take the shot, take the vaccine, even though the data showed as early as May 2020, just 3 months in, that for the healthy people under 55, there was minimal risk, but they shut the country down anyway.
I think we're being taken over by what's becoming a totalitarian state, which is based on very bad science, in fact false science, and there's a fraud behind a lot of it.
And they said the vaccine was 100% safe and effective.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first say that I believe COVID vaccines are indeed safe and effective.
The vaccines have all been through and met the necessary safety and quality standards.
I've just had a vaccine for COVID.
Vaccines being rolled out in the UK are not just safe, but they make you safe. They're saving lives and protecting people.
It's not just your own life you'll be saving, it's other people's lives too.
Trust the science and get on with it.
This is a safe and effective vaccine.
Except it wasn't, was it? The media played along and only told one side of the story and shut down many respected scientists who did not agree with the approach and wanted to warn us about the possible COVID vaccine harm. But they didn't manage to silence everyone.
But what is almost certainly, and if you allow me to say this, LaQuesta, what my own research has found, and this is something that is probably a likely contributory factor, is that the COVID mRNA vaccines do carry a cardiovascular risk. And I've actually called for the suspension of this pending an inquiry because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment about what's causing the excess deaths.
Yeah, someone at the BBC booked Dr. Malhotra to talk about statins, but he was determined to let us know about the vaccine harms. The all-party parliamentary group on the pandemic response heard about the terrible effects of weaponising fear. Have a read of The State of Fear by Laura Dodsworth. And of course, they kept hammering away about the danger of the far right.
That's from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. He says this, I conclude rather unsurprisingly that there is a greater violent threat from the far right. Just would like to pick up on that point because MI5, 67% of terror attacks on their books since 2018 are Islamist attacks. 3/4 of all MI5 cases are from Islamists. The Batley Grammar School protest, that wasn't the far right. The anti-Semitism boom we've seen in Britain since October 7th, that wasn't the far right. David Amos was murdered, not by somebody from the far right. Mike Freer forced out of politics by an arson attack. That wasn't the far right. Just Stop Oil, presumably, they're not the far right.
Fear again. Every announcement they make, the far right gets a special mention. Where are this far right? You know, the real fascists. Because by the government's own security services, they tell them that 90% of the people on the terror watch list, 90% are followers of Islam. That's 40,000 potential terrorists they would know about. Not to mention the ones they don't know about. Are you scared? You have
no, I'm not scared.
No? And all the undocumented illegal immigrants that they have no idea where they are because they've done a runner. The government has lost them. They have no idea how many of them are criminals, terrorists. We never hear about that.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, when certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
That's right. These tactics are nothing new. Of course, our leaders are frightened and clueless. They don't know what to do about the real threat of Islam.
We believe that life begins at death. We don't care about death. We love death.
And they don't know what to do about the threat of left-wing extremist ideologies. Well, some of them don't know what to do, and there's others elected that actually believe in these extremist destructive ideologies. And some of them want you to actually believe that taxing us more is really going to save the planet, regardless of what China and India are doing with fossil fuels.
We've cut CO2 by 44% on 1990 levels in this country.
Of course, not everyone is susceptible to this indoctrination. Some more pressure is needed.
If we continue down this path, we will enter a form of tyranny where certain views, certain opinions, certain people are deemed acceptable where others are not, based on what? It seems very arbitrary. That, to me, is terrifying.
You see, another piece of the architecture of a totalitarian state is to use the citizens to turn on each other. After years of increasing social isolation, people retreat into the online world, building echo chambers, polarised, angry, faceless discourse. We were all potential fertile ground for mass formation. The stay-at-home mandates during the COVID madness was perhaps the last piece of this. And lonely, socially isolated individuals, often stuck in meaningless jobs, carrying the fear and anxiety of the monsters created by the state. In this case, the fear of COVID. Frustrated by ever-increasing restrictions on their freedoms and the destabilising effect of ever-changing rules. But with the right nudging, they can be made to do pretty much anything.
Says you may not come within 2 metres of me.
I'm walking past you.
Because you're a dickhead without a mask.
You're a cunt putting people's lives at risk.
Asked her to wear a fucking mask. Like, seriously, woman who won't wear your mask, who don't wear your gloves, who don't practice social distancing. Wear your fucking mask.
How else do you think people were made to come out on the streets, on their doorsteps, and clap for the NHS when their appointments and treatments were being cancelled? How else do you think the people were turned into zealots? They turned on those who did not believe. They turned on the people who would not comply.
What happens when they, your neighbours, start breaking lockdown rules, with the police receiving 200,000 tip-offs?
You see, people brainwashed during COVID. People only given one message, continuously given that message by controlled media. Lonely, socially isolated, frightened people. People who perhaps have little meaning in their jobs will take up the cause for the state. These people are desperate for meaning. They're desperate and they crave a master. They want to be told what to do, and they see forcing others to comply as their virtue. These zealots get a meaning from their righteous cause. They become part of a group. The antidote to the social isolation and the loneliness. But here's the problem. Just as the state manipulates increasingly lonely, socially isolated, anxious and frustrated people, with social media, others can do that too. Sometimes the government let it run. Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil. Why do they let it run? Because it's broadly in the direction they want things to go. And sometimes they let it run because they're frightened to confront it, like the Black Lives Matter marches or the transgender movement, even though they know it's nonsense, it's dangerous. And sometimes they let it run for decades, as with Islam, incompatible with Western liberal democracy, because they're too frightened and too clueless to confront it.
That window's gone.
And now there's a fifth column, agitating on the streets, calling for jihad, calling for the extermination of Jews, and there are thousands and thousands who join these marches who have been manipulated in just the same way.
So I just noticed the signs that you got from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does that mean?
Well, it's quite self-explanatory. It needs to be...
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, isn't it? Because I guess what I mean is, how would that come about? What would happen to the Israelis, etc.?
I don't.
I'm trying to think of how to word it. Isn't it just as self-explanatory as the area of land? It's Palestine's land.
What are you guys out here protesting for?
No comment.
Why are you guys out here today?
Speak to the organizers.
Why can't I wanted to ask you though.
Do you know what NY is doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be a good idea if we...
Why are you guys protesting?
Just to be a part of the cause.
And what's the cause?
Yeah, I'm not the right person to talk to.
So why are you guys protesting today?
I don't want to talk to press, I'm sorry.
They don't really want to talk. Why are you guys protesting here today?
I don't want to do this, sorry.
Do you know why you are protesting here today?
Yes.
And what is that reason?
No comment.
Build a new workers' party, a socialist alternative to Sunak and Starmer, for a socialist intifada.
Yeah.
What's a socialist intifada?
If I'm being honest with you, I just got this at the stand over there.
Okay.
I don't actually know the definition of the word intifada.
Okay.
But, I mean...
Do any of you know the definition of the word intifada? Stop bombing Gaza, that makes sense. What about that one? Yeah. And what does that mean?
Well, it means that it's. I'm definitely not the person to talk to about this.
The claimed cause is to stop a so-called genocide of Palestinians. They believe in the cause. They can't name the river or the sea, but they march anyway. They didn't march for the millions of Uyghur Muslims being persecuted by the Chinese, because no one else was. They didn't march for the Yemeni Muslims being bombed by the Saudis, because no one else was. And they didn't march for the hundreds of thousands of Syrian Muslims killed by Assad, because no one else was. But in this case, people are marching, so they march.
The majority of them know nothing. I grew up in Israel.
I moved here 27 years ago. I've been to explosions, I've been to the shit. None of those people got their info.
I have no idea. It's the next cool thing to do. The average person, I think, at these protests is the kid that isn't cool or good looking enough to be invited to a house party. So because they're not invited to a house party, they make their own, which is out here, which is why what happens when they summon these people with a flyer, 10,000 of them show up. These are 10,000 people with nowhere else to be.
They get to be part of a community. They find meaning where they had none. In their outrage and indignation, they get to feel good about themselves. There are many causes where this mass formation happens. Me Too, pro-abortion, so-called vaccines, free Palestine, transgenderism. Sometimes people jump on board because they believe in it. It gives them meaning and community and makes them feel better about themselves. Others, they jump on board out of fear of what may happen if they don't. And our so-called leaders, they're frightened to confront the threat of Islam. And they're too frightened to even talk or confront the threat of the far left. But don't worry, guys, don't worry. They've just changed the definition of extremism. That'll work, that'll beat it. Of course, not everyone is caught up in this mass formation. Not everyone can be manipulated quite so easily. And not everyone will comply with the government deciding what ideas are correct and telling people what they have to think. So they have to have consequence for dissent, for non-compliance. There has to be a consequence for speaking out. And the government will decide what non-compliance is. The government will decide what you're allowed to say. As the cost of speaking out increases, fewer people are prepared to speak out. Everyone should get the message, and a spiral of submission and compliance should follow. Perfect. Well, that's the theory. But the government know they have to be careful. Make non-compliance costly enough to crush dissent, but not so costly that they create martyrs. Create one Spartacus, and you may have a revolt on your hands.
Every day brings new studies, new findings that confirm the last 2 years of life in the Western world as a blizzard of lies.
Keep in mind, Tony Blair is the one who's been advocating for vaccine passports, digital identification through COVID, and all of these measures.
Either we stand for free speech, in which some people will take offence, some people won't, or we don't, right?
There's no scientific evidence. Sadiq Khan rubbished the evidence and had it rewritten to serve his own needs. No one voted it. It's the beginning and bringing in of a surveillance state, and he's trying to make noises so that I can't say that.
Every one of them lost their jobs for the wrong kind of views. And politicians are no exception.
Will the Prime Minister instruct the Department of Education to order schools to stop indoctrinating our children and to concentrate on their duty of care to protect them?
Suella Braverman, Lee Anderson, Andrew Bridgen, they all lost their jobs for challenging the approved government narrative. You may not actually care about the people you've just seen, but it's not actually about them. This targeted persecution, it could land on your doorstep at any time. I'm in Wales in a village called Furness. I'm at the Stradey Park Hotel, where last summer in 2023, the Home Office made a decision to house 300 male unvetted migrants in a village with a population of 400 people. There were concerns from the local population. They decided to come out and protest about it. Now, the police's job in a democracy, in a democratic society, is to protect the rights of the citizens to protest, for legal and lawful protests. We're now going to meet some members of this community to find out if that's what the police did.
My name's Paul Price. I live in Llanelli in West Wales. The last time I did vote, I voted Labour.
I'm Helen Thomas and I'm 52 years of age. I live in Furness, Llanelli. I used to vote for Labour.
My name is Joel Fuller. I was born in Furness, Llanelli. I'm 77 years of age, and last time I voted was for Conservative.
My name is Peter May. I'm 57 this year.
I'm from Port Hennett in Swansea, and I voted Conservative.
My name is Mark Sheehan. I was formerly a Royal Marine. I've been a police officer. I live in Bellinville, very close by, 60 years old, and last election I voted for Boris Johnson, Conservative.
Our local 4-star hotel was going to be turned into a migrant hostel, housing 230 people in 77 bedrooms.
And what was your concern with that?
Safety. The strain on NHS, the strain on all our services, because we have no facilities, we've got no A&E. Our hospital is only a minor injury unit.
Okay.
And the worry for safety of my children and children in the area.
They're mostly undocumented males that are arriving here by dinghy from France. Why are they arriving here undocumented? Why aren't they going through the proper channels? That rings alarm bells in my head. And looking at Ireland's a little taster of what's potentially going to come here, and Ireland's in trouble.
It was a really peaceful protest.
People
until
singing
the police.
songs.
Yeah. And it was like the whole community just come together. There was a massive feeling of love. It was great. It was really nice until that day.
There was no trouble at that hotel. No policeman was ever punched in the face, kicked, spat at, and yet they behaved all the time as though we were terrorists almost.
It was just crazy. My daughter got pushed to the ground.
How old was your daughter?
My daughter was 9 at the time. So I didn't know where my daughter was at this point either. Okay. And I was just shouting, like, you know, where's my daughter? And trying to get to my daughter. And it got to the point where they just literally battered me all over the road. I had handcuffs up my nose. He punched me with a left hook at the back of my head. There's footage of it.
And your daughter's present?
My 9-year-old daughter saw all of this.
As an ex-police officer, what's the police's job when a protest is going on?
Well, as the police keep on saying, to facilitate a peaceful protest. But really, they were there in this protest to crush the protest.
Never been in trouble, lived your whole life. Now you've gone to a protest and here you are in the police cell.
I still hear that echo of the cell door. Yeah, yeah.
So you're 77 and you're under arrest. How's that?
And also as well, they arrested me. 8 police came to my house to arrest me in a riot van.
So you're at home at the time, so this is not at the demonstration. So you've been protesting and the police have come to your house to arrest you. Yeah. 8 police officers.
Yeah.
In a marked riot van.
Yeah.
Have you ever been arrested like that before?
No.
No, have you ever been arrested before?
No, never been in trouble before.
I was assured by the chief inspector before I got into that car that I would be home by the morning. And I wasn't. 21 hours they kept me in there.
My wife is a barrister, and I'm legally trained as well. And there were all these people who had been arrested, and then they were given, I think, well, similar to you, given bail conditions to prevent them protesting at all. Protesting, going anywhere within, not even allowed to protest online.
Yeah, not even allowed to talk about it.
Not even allowed to talk about it.
Not to engage in any protest.
Yeah.
Related activity relating to the Stradley Park Hotel, either in person or online.
Yeah, I couldn't go on any social media, messaging anybody, nothing.
So you couldn't talk, or you couldn't even post your opinion on social media?
No.
So not to go within 100 metres of Stradley Park Hotel?
Yeah.
Not to engage in any protest activities? Not to publish any information or data online? Yeah, they took away your ability to even discuss this topic. How did the media report this?
They put all the details about me being arrested, my name, my address, my age, but they've never once said everything was dropped.
So they kept you under these conditions, which limited your ability to use the internet, or to talk about this issue, or to protest, or to walk your dogs down the end of your road.
I had no freedom, did I?
So you didn't do nothing wrong, you were convicted of nothing, you're actually proven that you shouldn't have been arrested, and your work sacked you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere you've been for 14 years.
It's no longer a free country. It's not. The free speech is finished.
I've lost all respect for the police. It makes me feel angry towards the police.
You know, we are the general public, and if you are saying things that they don't like, they come for you.
There's a political ideology in the policing that's totally different when I was there.
It's opened my eyes, and I will never look back. I still would do it today. I would still go there and protest for my rights, for my children's rights, for my safety.
Depending on your ideological stance, the police will arrest Twitter or X users for mean tweets, criticism of identity politics, and even memes. If you're consistent and hold dear that this country was built on the foundation of the battle of ideas, when this is diminished, where you sit politically becomes obsolete.
Freedom of movement, freedom of speech, I'm not sure we have those anymore in this country. Certainly not to the extent that people think we have, and certainly those freedoms, rights, are under threat as they've never been before.
I disagree with every word you said, but I will go to the death to defend your right to say it. I think that's very important. And I think we want to remember it, and I think we want to live it.
You see, allowing people to speak freely runs the risk that government policies will be scrutinised and criticised. And it also runs the risk that government's intent and their incompetence will be exposed.
In my High Court ruling of 2020, Mr. Justice Knowles gave the starkest warning about the current state of policing. He said, in this country, we have never had a Stasi, a Cheka or a Gestapo. I think that what Mr. Justice Knowles saw was a trajectory. I think that he saw that without intervention, without activism, without political change, that we were heading toward a police force which was a political police force that would judge people not based upon whether they had or had not committed a criminal offence, but would go up against people because they held the wrong political views.
I've now got 2 police officers and a mental health nurse coming to see me because I went to the church and spoke to my local priest about what happened to the bishop in Australia and said, are we Christians supposed to take a stand? I'm not calling for violence or anything like that, never once said it because there's no allegation. Now look again, just for the benefit of everyone that's going to see this is discrimination against Christians right now. Because if I was Islamic and I said anything along them lines, you wouldn't care. You allow hate preachers in this country to preach the killing of homosexuals and that, and now you're on my door because I said Christians need to take a stand. I ain't calling for violence. I'm just calling to take a stand. Why do you think that you would be treated any differently? Because I've got a mental health nurse and 2 PCs, not PCSOs, come to my house, that's why.
The modus operandi of the state is clear. First, they ridicule you, demonise, ostracise you. Then they deplatform you, they debank you. Then they use lawfare. They use lawfare to persecute you with the law. Then they change the law. Just to try and get you, they literally change the law. And as with my arrest last November, then they just ignore the law. They lie. They fabricate charges and impose bail conditions to restrict where you can go, what you can do, who you can talk to. And through all of this, of course, they bankrupt you. They target you financially. But there is nothing more dangerous than a person who has nothing left to lose.
I mean, once the establishment move against you, their reach is absolutely immense. Life starts getting very difficult once you go against the narrative.
Sir, why have you been arrested? Because I'm writing down Hamas is terrorist organization. That's it. What did it say on your sign? What did it say on your sign? Hamas is terrorist.
When they attack me, when they assault me, I never assault back, never.
You never react. In the video, you get violently attacked.
Yeah, never react.
You've always got your hands up.
Yeah.
Have the police been there when at times that you've been attacked?
Many times. Always. Police is there. When they come, they still attacking me. They still assaulted me. They saying, yeah, you should live here. When you want to come back again, we arrested you.
They give you a dispersal order.
Exactly. In UK law, terrorist...
The Terrorism Act 2000, when someone shows support for a terrorist organisation.
Exactly. Someone when showing that supporting the terrorist organisation going to be 14-year prison.
Yeah.
They show. What they do? Harassing me. and pushing me back, you know?
When the police are there and people are violently attacking you, have the police arrested any of those people at the time?
Never. They never reacted them.
In this video, 2 people are attacking you from the front. One, your leg, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
One of them has smashed you.
Yeah.
So you're standing there, and from behind he's hit you with a weapon, yeah? Wood.
From back.
From behind. So from behind your leg, and obviously, look, this is a serious cut.
Yeah.
Your leg's been cut open. When the police have turned up and this is happening, what were the police's actions to the men that were attacking you?
Nothing. Nothing.
They violently attack you, and the police then attack you.
And especially when I de-arrested, I saw the guy which is attacking me. I told to police, the officer, I told him, he assaulted me. I saw him. Yeah. He assaulted me.
And there's now evidence.
He laughed. He laughed and go. They should be supporting law. They should be, you know,
enforcing law.
Enforcing law, yeah.
But they're not.
They're not. Right now, the UK and British people and the British police officer, they know, they kill our free speech.
Do you believe, with what you've experienced in Iran and what you're now seeing in London, do you believe there will be an attempted revolution?
Too many Iranian people in Iran saying that.
Saying it's the same?
That's going to be happen when the British people are staying silent.
Yeah, okay. And is this partly why you're speaking out?
Exactly. It's my future. It's our future.
That is Nayak Gorbani. He's from Iran. He is all too familiar with police brutality, arrested for holding a banner announcing UK government policy. The Hamas are a terrorist organisation. They actually are prescribed as a terrorist organisation. They arrest and continue to persecute him because they can't cope with the Hamas-loving protesters. Rather than deal with the problem, they arrest and prosecute the people highlighting the problem. Enoch Powell said over half a century ago, above all, people are disposed to mistake predicting troubles for causing troubles and even for desiring troubles. If only they love to think. If only people wouldn't talk about it, it probably wouldn't happen. So rather than deal with the people causing the trouble, what he's saying is they deal with the people talking about the trouble. And if all these tactics fail to silence the dissidents, well...
According to UNESCO, almost 100 journalists were killed in 2018. Hundreds are imprisoned. And when media workers are targeted, societies as a whole pay a price.
Saudi state television reporting this evening that journalist Jamal Khashoggi is dead.
Where the prison service has announced that the jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has died. In a statement, it said he felt unwell after a walk and almost immediately lost consciousness.
Reporter Danny Casolaro was found dead over the weekend in a motel in Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Local authorities quickly ruled his death a suicide.
You felt like a fall guy. I mean, you've been set up, haven't you?
A man under pressure. He'd once said, "I will probably be found dead in the woods." Within days of this appearance at the committee, that's exactly what happened.
Now luckily, not every dissident gets assassinated, but we are all to be re-educated. A key part of a totalitarian state is the re-education of dissidents, those who will not submit and will not comply. You have to be sent to diversity training. You've been taught about your white privilege. You might have been given unconscious bias training to teach you about the prejudice you didn't even know you held.
This online presenter-led training course is the perfect introduction to equality and diversity in the workplace for both employees and employers to help them work towards legal compliance. It covers the protected characteristics, the different types of discrimination, stereotyping, allyship, positive action, and it explores equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
You all know, whether you're in education or work, you can't speak freely. And if you do speak freely, if you do voice the wrong views, you'll find out pretty quickly you've got a problem. So, how long have we got until people who resisted mandated medical treatments, people who want an end to mass immigration, people who believe only a woman can give birth, and everyone with a penis is a bloke? How long till you have your freedom taken and you're sent for re-education, just like the Uyghur Muslims, until you repent and you comply?
Right now, there are over 3 million people in concentration camps in East Turkestan. The government will say that those numbers are exaggerated, that they're re-educating Muslim terrorists and political dissidents. But it is a lie.
There are ideas that are right, and the state decides exactly what those ideas are. Anything else is viewed as dissent, and dissent must be crushed.
We are going to get to a point where more ordinary people who right now, they're complacent and they're busy with their own lives, they're going to see what's going to happen, and at that point it's going to be potentially too late. The reason we're actually criticizing the establishment is because we want them to be better. We're not anarchists. We want to prevent any sort of upcoming civil war, but at that point it might be too late.
And as Winston Churchill said, the truth, you can deride it, you can criticize it, you can ridicule it, but at the end of the day it's still there, and it is the truth.
See, allowing people to express alternative views, that runs the risk of awakening the people to their failures, to their moral bankruptcy and the corruption of the government's policies, exposing the agendas of those who are supposed to be serving us, highlighting that the government's actions, they may not be in the best interests of freedom-loving citizens. They want control over every aspect of your life, where you go, how far you travel, what you eat, what you spend your money on, who you meet, what you say. You see, in a totalitarian state, scrutiny, it cannot be allowed. Agendas and corruptions are hidden. Accountability is dead. Failure's hidden. And there are so many failures. The failure of invading Iraq, which destabilised the entire Middle East. It radicalised a generation of Muslims and unleashed 20 years of Islamic-inspired mayhem across the world. The failure to stop illegal immigration and its disastrous effects on our society. The failure to reduce legal migration. Actually, it's worse than failure. For decades, successive governments have implemented ideology-driven policies that drive massive immigration without a clue or a care about the impact on our society and our culture. The UK population grew by 750,000 in 2023 alone. Their failure with COVID. They shut down the country. They took away our rights and our freedoms. They flirted with compelling medical treatment, destroyed businesses and lives, and told themselves they were fabulous at the same time, patted themselves on the back for these failures. The truth, of course, they caused the inflation we suffer by printing money, continually printing money. And don't ask questions about excess deaths, miscarriages, stillbirths, cancers, heart disease, and vaccine efficacy and safety. The failure to reject net zero, the Marxist anti-capitalist dogma that will drive millions into poverty and hardship. They embrace unilateral economic disarmament. They can't stop the tide. They can't stop an earthquake, a hurricane, or even a strong breeze. And yet they want us to believe if they tax us more, they'll be able to stop the climate from changing. And just like with COVID, the fools that lead us, they say they're following the science. They say they're following the science in order to shut down the voices of esteemed scientists who cry out that climate change is nonsense. You just follow the money on that one. The failure to reject gender ideology. This really should be easy for them. But the fools that lead us struggle to say what a woman is, and as a result, the destructive forces seeking to dismantle reality and society run rampant. Thousands of British children are told there are more than two genders, and boys can be girls, and girls can be boys. Let's be clear, there aren't and they can't.
Well, it's the report that's rocked Britain. It's called Asleep at the Wheel, and it's found that children are being seriously compromised over the spread of trans ideology in schools. Now, among the findings were that at least 28% of secondary schools do not have single-sex toilets, and some 60% of students are allowed to participate in whatever sport they like, regardless of whether they match that gender. Only 39 out of 154 schools replied to researchers that they would inform parents if a child said they wanted to change their gender. Some 87 schools said they would tell the parents.
And today, as part of the World Book Day celebrations, we've been hosting sessions from Drag Queen Storytime.
If you want to wear an item of clothing and it makes you happy, please do it. It's just one person in one outfit, and you just got to learn to love everybody.
If you want to change a culture, if you want to destroy a culture, then the place to start is teacher training. And when you think of it, to permeate the whole curriculum with issues of gender, race and class, it does exactly that.
Drag queen go, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy.
Mass psychosis and gender dysphoria destroys so many vulnerable children's lives. The failure to achieve peace. They squandered the opportunity for peace that came from the collapse of the Soviet Union. They reduce the geopolitical discourse to a Punch and Judy show. They want us to believe Putin is entirely evil and the West is Santa Claus. But people know about their broken promises. Letting ex-Soviet nations join NATO and join the European Union. People know the CIA caused the Maidan revolution to get rid of the pro-Russian leader of Ukraine. People know about the West's biological warfare laboratories across Ukraine. I'm not on Putin's side, but our leaders orchestrate conflict and take us towards war. So why is the government implementing a totalitarian state? Because they're terrified of their failures being exposed. While our leaders tremble and hide in their Westminster bunkers, the people of Britain, who they're supposed to be serving, they live and die with the consequences of government failures. So many failures.
We could be looking at the decay of Western civilization.
So, to the leaders of our nation, the people elected to serve us, the people, your lust for power and your moral cowardice created this mess. Without pride or confidence in our nation, you cower in fear and you facilitate every ideology that comes along. You took the knee to the Marxists of Black Lives Matter. You embraced immorality of the transgender movement. You watch as men dressed as women read to primary school children and pump sexualised material into their little minds. You drank the Kool-Aid on climate change when Nobel Prize winning scientists say it's bullshit. And you cower like cowards before Islam. These ideologies seek to tear down our society, our culture and our heritage. You are paralysed with fear, or you join them out of the fear of what might happen if you don't. What have you done to foster equality under the law, democracy and liberty? What have you done to protect our precious cultural inheritance of which you are the custodians? What have you done to protect our borders? What have you done to protect our daughters from 50 years of rape and torture at the hands of Islamic gangs? What have you done to defend the sovereignty of the United Kingdom against malign influence of undemocratic, unaccountable bodies like the European Union, United Nations, the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum? What have you done to protect the rights of those who actually oppose you? What have you done to stand with the people of Britain for common sense? What have you done for our economy? You set fire to the house, now you want credit for trying to put out that fire. What have you done to educate our children? You've poisoned their minds with evil nonsense. You have done nothing at all. In your lust for power, you seek to take our freedoms. And in your moral cowardice, you fail to speak out and stand against the evil ideologies that want to wreak havoc on our beautiful country. You underestimate the human spirit. We are a free people. You cannot take that freedom away. We will fight you to preserve it, and our love for freedom will always conquer your lust for power. Your tyranny will fail. And as for the rest of us, the people of Great Britain, we are perilously close to becoming a totalitarian state. We already have two-tier policing, a politicised judiciary and controlled media. They take money to push narratives. Resistance to the narrative is costly, and the more costly it becomes, the fewer people will speak out. And despite the appearance of a liberal society, our democracies, our cultural inheritance, our real equality and democracy, and our liberty, they are crumbling before our eyes. If Western governments learned anything in recent years, they've learned that fear is an effective tool of control. And many people appear willing to give up their freedoms for a promise of safety, or even just a little extra convenience. And by the way, the totalitarian state will try and displace all previous traditions, and it will try to redefine reality itself. This totalitarianism demands we all embrace a set of so-called progressive beliefs, which are in fact incompatible with reality. Let's just take one example, that there's a massive threat from the so-called far right, when the reality is 90% of the people on the terrorist watch list are followers of Islam. Or mass immigration and multiculturalism is a great idea. Or there's over 100 genders because we say there are. And what will come next? Sex with little children is just another form of sexual expression? It will not be long before denouncing paedophilia is demonised, as was the Marxist-Leninist dogma of the early 20th century. Lonely, hopeless, angry people who have given up on our leaders, and who can blame them? And desperate for a purpose, a promise of something better, a place to belong. They are desperate, if you like, for a new religion. Today, the new religion may appeal to people's desire for a just society, a society that liberates victims of historical oppression. It may appeal to people's fear of global warming, their desire to save the planet for humanity. The pretext is always altruistic, care and concern. But the reality requires demonising individuals who dissent and persecuting out-of-favour groups. In reality, concern for the oppressed or for humanity is lost under a wave of hate for tradition and anyone who challenges the so-called progressive dogma of the day. And the state uses manufactured crisis and the threat of chaos to implement new measures and take away more of your freedoms. Again, it's for your own good. There has been no violent revolution, but the revolution has occurred. It is complete. Hate-filled progressive groups and ideas have infiltrated our schools and our universities. Their graduates have entered the corporate world and the public sector. They run the media. You may think you have the right views, but if we are to learn anything from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, there is no way of knowing what charges will be brought against you. No one knows what's happening tomorrow. There is a permanent and ever-shifting inquisition. So watch out. We can expect the battle for our society, for our cultural inheritance, to get worse before it gets better, because tyrants do not want to give up their power easily. But as with the hard totalitarianism of communist Russia and China, which depended on people's fear of challenging their lies and unreality, so it is with the insanity of the world today. We must continue to speak the truth. More people must stand up and speak out. The stakes could not be higher. If we lose our freedom to speak, the freedom to think will become the next casualty. Scrutiny dies and tyranny reigns. Thank you. To restore faith in the British public, the head must be removed from the snake. Let's start with getting the resignation of Mark Rowley. If you're angered and frustrated by what you've seen, please go to resignmarkrowley.com. We will hand this petition in our thousands at our next event on July the 27th in London.